More than a dozen innocent children were lured into a dry well by a man, who told them they were playing hide and seek. He ignored their pleading eyes and sealed the well tight with a heavy lid. Not long after he left, a construction crew arrived to build a subway station on the site. The workers had no idea that over a dozen living souls were trapped inside that sealed well. They operated the excavator and filled it straight in. Years later, the subway station was completed, but ever since it opened, strange things have kept happening there. Every incident is utterly eerie, enough to make your skin crawl. One day, a college student headed to the station as usual to take the subway back to campus, but before the train even arrived, the platform screen doors in front of him slid open early. Right then, he heard the sound of children laughing and playing from the tracks. Out of concern, he decided to take a look, knowing it wasn't safe. He crouched down and carefully peeked over the edge, but he never expected what would happen next. After the college student's tragic decapitation incident, the local government had the entire station fitted with security cameras, both to calm public outcry and improve safety. The incident also caused a sharp drop in passenger traffic at Oksu Station after dark. At night, the platform was completely empty, not a soul in sight. But one day, the staff noticed something odd. A man with a crossbody bag was standing on the usually empty platform. 2 trains had already come and gone, and he still hadn't boarded. Sensing something was wrong, the supervisor told Woo-won, who was on duty with him, to go check it out. But when Woo-won got to the platform, the man was already standing out on the tracks. Woo-won shouted for the man to climb back up right away, but no matter how loud he yelled, the man just stood there frozen, staring at something, completely unresponsive. With the train fast approaching, Woo-won jumped down onto the tracks to pull the man to safety, and once he was down there, he finally saw what the man had been staring at. It was a little girl, crouching beside the tracks and staring right back at the man. The sight left Woo-won dazed for a second, but he quickly snapped back to reality. The train was arriving. Watching the man die right in front of him was too much for Woo-won to take. He locked himself in the bathroom, splashing cold water on his face over and over to try and clear his head. But just then, he heard a strange noise coming from the stall next to him. Instinctively, he went to check.
안에 누구 계시냐고요? 혹시 몸이 안 좋으시거나 도움이 필요하시면 신호를 주세요. 이게 제가 그냥 열기가 좀...
Woo-won realized it was just his co-worker playing a prank. He fought the urge to punch him, chewed him out angrily, and stormed out. When the co-worker went to wash his hands and leave, he noticed a string of numbers written on the mirror. He had no idea that by reading those numbers out loud, he had just marked himself as the evil spirit's next target. Meanwhile, the police and coroner were investigating the scene of the subway tragedy. The man, struck by the high-speed train, had been torn to pieces. Even the seasoned coroner was overwhelmed by the remains, wondering if they could ever be pieced back into a whole body. As he was working, the coroner suddenly heard a sound nearby. He turned and saw a little girl crouching at the bottom of the stairs, staring straight at him. He had no idea when she'd gotten there. He hurried over and asked why she was there, but the girl acted like she hadn't heard him. She just held up a string of numbers.
왜? 여기 더 큰 거 있어. 다리 같은데?
알았어.
When he crouched down again, the girl who'd been there just a second ago had vanished without a trace. Around the same time, reporter Na-young arrived at the station. She'd always been chasing a bombshell exclusive to make a name for herself at the TV station. As luck would have it, her best friend was Woo-won, and she'd heard countless ghost stories about Oksu Station from him. This latest tragedy smelled like a huge story to her, so she rushed straight to the station to interview the witness, the subway driver. The driver was sitting catatonic on a station bench. He didn't respond to any of Na-young's questions, just kept muttering something under his breath. Na-young couldn't make out a word he was saying. Then she noticed something else. The driver's body was covered in fresh fingernail scratches. She didn't think much of it at first, and kept asking her questions, but the driver fell silent, stood up, and walked straight away. Na-young figured the accident had left the driver with severe trauma. With no other leads, she went to Woo-won and asked him to sneak her a full copy of the incident security footage. It would make for a killer scoop. Sure enough, the next morning her story blew up across every major media outlet and hit the top of the charts. Seeing everyone around her talking about her report, Na-young couldn't hide her delight. When she got to the office, Her co-workers threw her a small celebration, congratulating her on landing the headline for the company. But to everyone's surprise, their supervisor rushed in with breaking news and he was anything but happy.
너 어제 기관사랑 인터뷰한 거 확실해?
네.
그게 몇 시인데?
한 10시 정도인데 왜 그러시죠?
그 시간엔 기관사가 이미 죽었을 때라는데.
기관사가 죽었다고?
그래 임마!
Na-young didn't know what to believe. To prove she'd really spoken to the driver, she went back to the station with a senior colleague and pulled up the security footage from that day. But what she saw left her stunned. She was the only one on the bench, talking to thin air like a crazy person. Na-young was plunged into deep self-doubt. Was she losing her mind? She couldn't accept that she'd interviewed a dead man the day before. To be sure, she asked Woo-won to use his staff access to take her to the morgue to see the driver's body. Even though the driver's features were twisted in death, she recognized him instantly. It was definitely the man she'd spoken to. The fingernail scratches all over his body were exactly the same as she'd seen the day before, only there were more of them now. Her journalist's instincts kicked in, and she reached for her camera to take a photo. Suddenly, she jolted in fright, but everything went back to normal in an instant. She brushed it off, thinking her eyes were playing tricks on her. Watching her photograph the scratches, the coroner spoke up. He said that in the 30 years since Oksu Station was built, he'd handled dozens of accidental death cases there, and every single victim had those same fingernail scratches on their body, to varying degrees. All of them had been ruled accidents after investigation, but he was convinced there was some hidden connection between all the deaths. No sooner had he finished speaking than Woo-won noticed something. There was a row of fingernail scratches on his own hand too, and he hadn't even felt them appear. Woo-won told himself he was just hallucinating from the stress of witnessing the tragedy, but when he got back to work, he saw the exact same scratches on his co-worker Sung-jun's arm.
너 이거 뭐야?
네?
아니 손톱 자국 뭐냐고.
몰라. 그냥 생겼어요.
Woo-won knew something was very wrong, but he had no idea what to do. He told Sung-jun to go to a hospital and get checked out as soon as possible. Then the two of them went on duty as usual. No sooner had they stepped onto the platform than Sung-jun's eyes locked on an attractive woman. He watched her walk into the restroom, unable to look away. The woman looked dazed, and deep fingernail scratches were clearly visible all over her body. She was clearly annoyed by the sudden, unexplained wounds.
아, 진짜 짜증나게.
The woman let out a blood-curdling scream and thrashed around inside the stall. She lost her balance, fell, and hit her head on the toilet tank, dying instantly. Other passengers outside heard her screams and filed a complaint with station staff. Sung-jun was on duty, so he followed orders and went to check the women's restroom. He saw the woman's handbag left on the sink and assumed she was still in a stall. He called out loudly.
저 민원 때문에 들어왔습니다. 안에 여자분 계시면 노크 좀 해주세요.
When he got no answer, he knocked on the stall door. Still nothing. A bad feeling crept over him. He got down on the floor and tried to peek under the stall door. And just like that, both Sung-jun and the woman, one inside the stall, one outside, were dead in that restroom, within just a few minutes of each other. Na-young got Woo-won's call and rushed over immediately. She found him sitting on the floor, completely broken, and hurried to ask what had happened. Na-young assumed he was grieving his co-worker's death, but then Woo-won held out his hand. Somehow, a row of fingernail scratches had appeared there, identical to the ones on his two dead co-workers. The only strange thing that had happened to him? Last night on his way home from work, he'd run into a little girl at the station exit. She hadn't said a word, just had a number code on her, and Woo-won had read it out loud without thinking. Knowing his co-workers had all died right after those scratches appeared, Woo-won was terrified. And sure enough, the vengeful spirits came for him that very night. He was jolted awake from sleep by a loud commotion. When he opened his eyes, several children were in his room. He had no idea how they'd gotten in. Their faces were twisted and grotesque, and they were crawling slowly toward him. He tried to get up, to scream, but he couldn't make a sound. He couldn't move an inch. It was only a terrible nightmare, but Woo-won could feel it. Death was closing in on him. Just when the two of them were at a loss over the mysterious scratches, a woman named Tae-hee reached out to Na-young. She said she'd seen Na-young's news report, and that she was the sister of the man who'd been hit by the train. when she heard Woo-won had the scratches too. Tae-hee told them a story from the past. 30 years ago, before Oksu Station was built, the site was home to a private orphanage called Love Home. It sounded like a kind place, and it did take in homeless street children, but it was all a front. The real reason the director took in the children was to make money. He ran a black market organ trafficking ring, harvesting and selling the kids' organs for massive profit. For better or worse, the orphanage was slated for demolition to make way for Oksu Station. You'd think the director would have stopped his crimes then, but he didn't. To keep his atrocities from coming to light, he lured all the remaining unsold children into the dry well under the pretense of playing hide and seek. And that's how the horror at the start of this story began. Tae-hee and her brother were the director's own adopted children, the ones he kept up front. That's how they survived. The number codes Woo-won and his co-workers had seen on the children? Those were the orphanage ID numbers the kids had before they died. Tae-hee and her brother had been haunted by what they witnessed all those years. Tae-hee had become a recluse, suffering from severe depression. Her brother, meanwhile, was obsessed with finding the old well. He'd spent years wandering the Oksu Station area, searching aimlessly. Finally, on the day he died, he sent Tae-hee a video. He said he'd found a sealed-off secret tunnel. He'd gone deep inside, and at the end, he'd found the skeletal remains of those children just lying there, abandoned. But no one expected what happened next. Right after he climbed out, just as he was about to go public with the truth, that accident took his life. Now that they knew the full story, Woo-won and Na-young realized all this was the work of the children's restless, vengeful spirits, but they had no idea who could help them. For the sake of the children and for Woo-won's life, they decided to go find the tunnel themselves. They hoped if they could put the children's spirits to rest, they might lift the curse on Woo-won. Following the video from Tae-hee's brother, they found the secret tunnel. It was pitch black inside. Woo-won turned on his phone's flashlight and led the way forward. Then he accidentally opened his camera app, and what he saw on the screen made his blood run cold. The empty tunnel had triggered the camera's face detection. It was locked onto something just ahead of them, something invisible to the naked eye. And whatever it was slowly coming closer.
왜 그래?
Woo-won collapsed to the ground in terror, but Na-young, right beside him, was completely calm. She couldn't see a thing. With her reassurance, Woo-won forced himself to get back up, and they kept walking deeper into the tunnel. The tunnel wasn't very long. Soon, they came upon the children's bones. To confirm this was the old well, they dug at the dirt around the remains with their bare hands, looking for more evidence. Before long, tattered scraps of clothing surfaced, and right then, the children's spirits rose one by one from the earth, standing before them.
아이구나. 내가 너희 원하는 세상에 알려줄게.
After a chorus of shrill, mournful cries, the children vanished. Only the pile of bones remained. The truth was right there in front of them. As soon as they climbed out, they called the police. The children's remains were finally unearthed and given proper recognition. They thought once the truth came out, the curse on Woo-won would be lifted. But the scratches on his hand were still there. Na-young tried to comfort him, saying scars take time to heal. Na-young didn't stop there. She wrote a full report on the 30-year-old injustice, hoping to publish it and give a voice to the poor children. But to her shock, her heartfelt article was rejected by her supervisor. She tried to ask why, but the supervisor gave her no explanation. He just yelled at her. When she was about to push back, her team leader stepped in and pulled her aside. From the team leader, she finally learned why her story was being buried. It turned out the director wasn't the only one who'd covered up the massacre all those years ago. A lot of powerful people knew there were dozens of children down that well. They pretended not to know, and let the kids be buried alive. Every single one of them was part of the same corrupt system. The huge profits from the organ trade had tied them all together, one way or another. Back then, other reporters had gotten wind of the orphanage tragedy too, but all of them had been silenced by one obstacle or another. Na-young refused to accept it. For one thing, she'd promised the children she'd get them justice. For another, her best friend Woo-won's life was still on the line. There was no way she was letting this go. Meanwhile, at work, Woo-won ran into someone unexpected, the coroner from the case. Woo-won glanced deliberately at the man's hand, and the scratches were completely gone. He cornered the coroner right away and demanded to know how he'd gotten rid of them. The coroner didn't hide the truth. He told him straight. As soon as the scratches appeared on his own hand, he knew he'd been cursed. He dug through piles of records, investigated the old incident, and learned the whole story. But he knew the orphan's resentment was too deep to be easily lifted, so he found a loophole. If you could get another person who knew the truth to read out the same child's ID number you'd read, the curse would transfer to them instead. And the person he'd chosen was Tae-hee. He'd broken into her home with a knife and forced her to read the number out loud. Sure enough,